Hi there, this is Josh from Literary Gladiators, and today I'm here to introduce the 16th foodie book tag. The previous foodie book tags that I have introduced to this channel and to the booktube community are the cheese book tag, cookie book tag, butter, pasta, cannoli, sausage, seafood, soup, sandwich, pizza, classic candy, melon, apple, pumpkin, and muffin book tags. If you have not checked them out yet, I encourage you to do so, and as always, I'll leave them down below. But today, we're going to be talking about canned food. This is the canned food book tag, and the reason that I decided to structure a tag about canned food is because February is Canned Food Month. I decided to put together 14 questions. Some of them are general, others include the names of brands, but I'm pretty sure that the questions themselves will still be answerable. And many of the canned food that I made mention to, I would discourage you from getting to begin with. But I think that there were some interesting and clever questions that could be made from them. So let's begin. First one is canned fruit. A cafeteria staple, but the question is a work that makes you think about being in school, because just about every meal at the cafeteria included assorted fruit, even though it was in a plastic container, but most of the times when you find it in the supermarket, you'll find it in a can anyhow. But the one that I chose is the Candy Corn Contest. And in some way, the entire Polk County School series by Patricia Riley Giff. That was the first book in my novel reading class that I went over in 4th grade, and I think the entire book was set on school grounds. Even when Richard, who was the central character of that particular book, was not, even when it wasn't school hours, it was still following him on school grounds and on campus. So, with everything put together, I can't help but think about school when I think of the Candy Corn Contest, and in essence, I would say the entire series, because it's part of a complete series that centralizes within the school grounds. Next one is canned vegetables. Your favorite thing to buy in mass market paperback. For I feel that that in the world of vegetables, the canned ones are the mass markets of their kind. But that does not mean that either one of them takes part in a bad practice. It all comes down to one's individual tastes. But I chose horror fiction. I think that horror fiction is perfect when it comes to mass market paperback. I think that it is light, but at the same time fast-paced and enjoyable. Most of my horror collection, I have a shelf here completely devoted to horror fiction. Just like this, Strange Highways by Dean Koontz. This is one of my mass market horror fiction paperbacks. My Stephen Kings are on a completely different row on the entire top end of my shelf. Reminds me I'll have to give you a library tour at some point in time in the near future. And it's a great shame that Dorchester Publishing was not very kind to their writers and contributors, because their paperbacks And the way that they released mass market paperbacks when they did was perfect. They did a great job with it, but it's a shame that they didn't treat their writers better. Next one is canned soup. Whether it be Campbell's or Progresso, and that is a work that is packed with tropes, just like a soup that's packed with whatever the key ingredient is and sodium. But Hunger Games trilogy, packed with tropes. It's almost as if there is a checklist to their methodology. Love triangle, check. Chosen one, check. And there's so many things that I can make mention to, but I don't want to reveal too much if you wanted to pick up the series. Hunger Games is incredible. The first book in the series. These two, not so much. Mediocre, bad. Next one is Baked Beans, a work that has at least two legitimate approaches. And for that, I chose A Hunger Artist by Franz Kafka, which is most certainly part of this collection of Kafka's short stories. I would say that if there are two approaches that can be made to this work at hand, number one is Kafka's very own trek to seek salvation as a Jewish man, and the second has to do with the tuberculosis that was killing him. This was written and sent out to be released right before he died. And at this time, Kafka himself was starving to death because he could not consume food. It was too painful to do so. And in this work at hand, the central character was seeking art in having people watch him starve himself. And the fact that he just was not interested in eating, it could be viewed in so many ways, whether it be the TB making it a lack of interest, or if it was a coping mechanism. Next one is canned soda. When you're hot, what work makes you feel cold and refreshed? First off, I feel that soda is one of the worst things that you can possibly consume. Filled with empty calories and several teaspoons of sugar. But the one that I chose for this is The Call of the Wild by Jack London. I would say that anything by Jack London is bound to make you feel colder because his stories are set in the Northwestern Territory, in the Yukon or in Alaska. But The Call of the Wild, the fact that it is set out in the dark nights, in where Buck is lost in the snow, it makes you feel colder, wetter, and grittier. Very much like going out on a blizzardy night and lying on the ground and making snow angels and rolling around. I feel that it doesn't necessarily make you feel refreshed, but if you want to feel cold, like somebody just poured a bucket of ice on you, then I'm pretty sure that this is going to help. Next one is coffee, as in canned coffee. Maxwell House, Folgers, Truckful of Nuts. A handy book. And for that, I chose Martha Stewart's Vegetables, which I'm going to be releasing a video review of very soon, because this really helped me incorporate vegetables into my diet a bit more in a creative way. This really helped me incorporate kale in ways that I really enjoyed. The kale ricotta dip and the kale pesto that replaced the mustard green pesto. I think that this was really helpful in doing that. Plus, it was really helpful in getting me to cook a bit more often. Plus, there's also a lot of information that you might need to know about all different kinds of vegetables. Next one is tomato puree. A great work that uses a lot of description. I chose East of Eden by John Steinbeck. I think that if you were to compare John Steinbeck's works to forms of tomato sauce, this would definitely be puree, because it is the cream of the crop. Grapes of Wrath was another great magnum opus of his, but this was his magnum opus. He really put a lot into this. And this has Steinbeck's signature of describing the setting and the landscape, devoting chapters to doing so. And he also devotes time to describing the time period, so that you are completely in zone to what he's talking about. And the story itself is also solid and strong, and this is as good as it gets. Next one is canned tuna. A work with the familiar adaptation you feel people must read. I personally prefer fresh tuna myself. I would say that many of people are most familiar with the albacore tuna that you find in the can. But if there's anything that I feel that people should read that they are certainly familiar with, it is the many fairy tales of Hans Christian Andersen. In particular, there's The Little Mermaid, The Snow Queen, which has been adapted into Frozen, and The Ugly Duckling. These are stories that are frequently told, but for The Little Mermaid, people know about the Disney version far more than they know about the original tale. And I think a lot can be offered by the original tale, even though it is very dark and it's very gory. Then there's The Snow Queen, which was adapted into Frozen, also a Disney CGI picture. But I think that Frozen was definitely catering to the agenda that they had and their target audience of younger girls. But I feel that The Snow Queen does a great job sharing its own message, and I think that the story itself is very strong, very funny, and it's also very thought-provoking, too. It really makes you think about what it really means to be intelligent. And then The Ugly Duckling, that is more so told as a side story. It's a story that's incorporated within forms of media. It's a children's book that people will present here and there. Maybe an adaptation from a show like Tom and Jerry or a Disney short. But reading the story itself really makes you think. And I did a whole video about the ugly duckling being a subject to what it means to have Asperger's syndrome. Next one is canned bread. The most pretentious work you have read, and the inspiration for this question is for those of you that have watched SpongeBob. There was an episode where Squidward left Bikini Bottom and moved to Tentacle Acres because SpongeBob and Patrick were annoying him so much. He went to the local market and he realized that they had an item that he loved called canned bread. And he bought it every day while he was there until he got bored of it. But it seems like the squids of in the ocean are snobby, stuck up, pretentious, and in this case it doesn't have to be a bad thing, but the way that I'm going to answer the question, I would say it is not necessarily the most flattering. And I chose My Dog Tulip by J.R. Ackerley because I feel that Ackerley felt that he knew much more about his dog than he really did, because he spent most of the book complaining about his dog's bad sex life and how she was not very successful in producing offspring. The fact he felt that he knew about what makes a good dog was not very well displayed in here, and I felt that he had a sense of arrogance to his approach. Next one is broth, which I prefer far more than canned soup. I like the use of broth in making a homemade soup, like a College Inn or anything, even if it's broth in a box. And that is a work you refer to time and time again. For that, I chose Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury, because being an avid reader and a lover for books, there's so much that this book warns us about, and I can't help but thinking of how we get to that point and what happens afterward. And without the physical book itself, what the authorities can do in order to rewrite history when there's no physical evidence to back it up. Alrighty, now we are moving on to the brands, none of which I approve of. And the first brand that I'm going to be talking about is Spam, which I think that so many people are familiar with. There's Spam as in the constant posting of useless junk, but Spam, the canned ham-like product, a work of popular fiction you would endlessly encourage people to read, which, in this case, it's not a bad thing. I just think that it is the best question for the item at hand. And I would encourage people to read Tell No One by Harlan Coben. This book was just amazing. It really included Coben's signature thriller elements, his twists and turns, but at the same time, he was able to capture such a heartfelt, lovable relationship between two people. And that can't help but make you feel warm and fuzzy inside. Next one is Chef Boyardee, which I feel a bit bad for Chef Boyardee because he did come over here from Italy to promote his product, but to me, canned pasta just is not my thing. I stopped eating most of the canned pastas by the time I was 4, and beefaroni I liked a little bit more up until the time I was 6, but yeah, just not for, and it's just, to me, it's repulsive. But for Chef Boyardee, the question is a character you feel tries to be someone they are not. And for that, in a way, I'm going to choose Jonas's father from The Giver. He's unnamed, but there's no way that anybody can sugarcoat or act nice and sympathetic about killing somebody. That is a spoiler from, if you haven't read The Giver, I would skip this little blippet, but him killing a twin because it was an ounce smaller than the other, and then putting it in a box, by that reason alone, that just is, you can't, there's no way you can sugarcoat that. This is a completely different world, but Jonas's father is as phony as they come. Next one is SpaghettiOs, which I do not like, I never liked them, and I never will like them. But the question at hand is a bit more of a positive one because it was the one that fit the best. An addictive children's book or series you enjoy reading as an adult. Recently, I made some purchases of some children's books, one of which is the Roald Dahl box set, and the one that I think fits perfectly with this is the Mr. Man Complete Collection. This is everything from the 47 books of the Mr. Man series. There's also the Little Miss series that Roger Hargreaves wrote and put together. But these books are so hysterical. He just takes an emotion and creates a character out of it. And the interesting thing about these characters is that they don't change who they are, but in some or in many cases, the opportunity is able to meet them and fit into their lives quite perfectly. The next one is Manwich, a book that does more with its summary than with its content. And for that, I chose a book that I don't have on me, and that is Blizzard by George Stone. I got Blizzard because it sounded like such an interesting concept about a great blizzard hitting upstate New York, and how it leaves certain people. What I got was a piece of Swiss cheese with holes that were way too big. He introduces different stories, but a lot of cases things are just there are too many things that are unnecessarily left open-ended, and I feel that he did not do enough to grip me and intensify the story as it needed to be. Next one is, what is your favorite kind of canned food? I would say that tomato puree is an important one. I personally like Tuna A and Red Pack. The authentic brands, I prefer that far more than the jarred sauce. I despise ragu. But I also like canned broth. I like canned items that are ingredients as opposed to meals. I think that I'd rather create a product using that, but being able to have more control over the finished product. And the last one is canned food drive. Who do you tag? And if there is a canned food drive in your area, I highly encourage people to take part in their local food drives or raise money or resources for their local food banks. But I'm going to tag 12 people. I'm going to tag Steve from Steve Donahue, who did a great job on the muffin book tag. I always enjoy hearing his responses. Alyssa from Sushi Dragon Master. Sue and Megan from the restricted section. Mark from Richardson Reads. Ryan from Madman Reads and Rocks. Peter from Peter Clark the Writer. Todd from Todd the Librarian. Anna from Anna Babbling Book. Allie from Hardback Hoarder. The Indian Somniac, who did a really good job with the butter book tag. It'll be really interesting to see how he approaches these questions at hand, because there are some brands in here. Rebecca and Sarah from Tea Hags. And Jess from Jess Reads Books. Thank you for tuning into this video. I hope you check out some more videos from our channel. And for now, keep reading.